I used to believe that buying my own home would finally earn my parents' respect, or at least a legitimate seat at their table. Instead, it earned me 79 missed calls and a front row seat to my family's implosion. Standing behind the deadbolt of my $350,000 sanctuary, listening to my mother pound on the door, I realized I wasn't holding the keys to a house anymore. I was holding a grenade, and I had finally pulled the pin. The silence in the hallway of my new home was not empty. It was heavy, filled with the expensive, terrifying scent of fresh latex paint and the sawdust ghost of sanded floors. I stood in the foyer, my heels clicking sharply against the hardwood, a sound that belonged entirely to me, for the first time in my 32 years. The air I breathed was not rented, borrowed, or granted on the condition of good behavior. I ran my hand along the wall. It was a soft, neutral gray, a color I had chosen after spending 3 hours in the aisle of a hardware store, debating shades that looked identical to the naked eye. This was my $350,000 box of air. It was a mid-century ranch in Maplebridge, a starter home by market standards, but a castle by mine. The purchase had drained me. It had taken 5 years of brown bag lunches, denied vacations, and 60-hour weeks at Northline Creative to save the down payment. I was a marketing analyst, a job that required me to be invisible but essential, turning chaos into clean, readable data for people who made 3 times my salary. I was good at it. I was good at being the machinery that made things work, the person who stayed late to turn off the lights. I walked into the living room, which was currently furnished only with a single armchair and a lamp I had dragged over from my apartment. The evening sun cut through the blinds, striping the floor in gold. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt a familiar, low-grade nausea, the kind that hits you when you realize you have stepped off the path everyone expected you to walk. Buying a house as a single woman in the Griffin family was not considered an achievement. It was considered an oddity, a deviation from the script. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I knew who it was without looking. Linda, my mother. I let it go to voicemail. Standing there, I thought about the dynamic that had shaped my credit score and my personality. My parents, Linda and Gerald, were good people on paper. They paid their taxes, mowed their lawn, and went to church on Sundays. But inside our 4 walls, there was a strict economy of attention, and I had learned early on that I was working in a deficit. Then there was Courtney. My sister was 3 years younger, blonde, effervescent, and perpetually in need of rescue. Courtney did not save money. She attracted it. She did not solve problems. She wept until someone else solved them for her. Growing up, if I got an A on a report card, I got a nod. If Courtney got a C, we went out for ice cream to cheer her up, so she would not feel discouraged. I remembered the year I turned 16. I had spent the summer lifeguarding to pay for my own used sedan. 2 years later, when Courtney turned 16, my parents bought her a brand new compact SUV because they wanted her to be safe on the road. When I had asked, quietly, why the safety standards differed between us, my father had sighed, looking over his spectacles, and said, "Alice, you are the capable one. Courtney needs a little more help. You should be proud that you do not need us like she does." I had worn that label like a medal for years. The capable one, the responsible one, the invisible one. But now, standing in my own living room, holding a deed with only my name on it, I felt the medal growing heavy. I walked to the kitchen, the room I was most excited about. With its quartz countertops and deep farmhouse sink, I imagined cooking dinner for one, drinking wine on the patio, and sleeping in on Saturdays without guilt. I did not know it then, but the silence I was cherishing was already on a timer. 2 weeks later, I hosted the housewarming dinner. It was supposed to be intimate, just my parents, Courtney, and her husband, Evan, but my mother had invited Aunt Sarah and Uncle Mike, and my cousin Beth, because, as she put it, a house is not a home until you fill it with noise. The noise was deafening. My mother, Linda, was in her element. She was a woman who occupied space aggressively, moving furniture, opening cupboards, and critiquing dust levels with a smile that dared you to be offended. She stood in the center of my open-concept kitchen, holding a glass of my wine, gesturing to the living room as if she were the realtor who had just closed the deal. "It is just wonderful," Linda announced, her voice pitching up so everyone could hear. "We are so proud of Alice. It is a big responsibility, a house like this, but it is really all of ours, is it not? A gathering place." I froze mid-pour, the bottle of Cabernet hovering over Uncle Mike's glass. Aunt Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "It is so nice to keep the assets in the family, and so much space." I forced a laugh, the sound scraping against my throat. "Well, the bank owns most of it," I said, trying to keep the mood light. "I just pay the mortgage." Linda waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, stop it. You know what I mean. It is good to have a family guest wing. We were just saying how cramped our house gets at Christmas. This will be much better. Guest wing?" I had 3 bedrooms. One was my master, one was my office, and one was a guest room that currently held a blow-up mattress. I looked at Courtney. She was sitting at the island, picking at the charcuterie board I had arranged. She looked tired. Her son, Mason, was with a sitter. But she carried the exhaustion of a toddler mom like a heavy coat beside her. Evan was leaning back on the stool, looking around with an appraising eye that made my skin prickle. "Nice place, Al," Evan said, popping a cube of cheese into his mouth. "Seriously, the square footage is killer for the price. We were looking at Zillow, and you got a steal." "Thank you," I said, moving to put the wine bottle down. "It needs work, but it is mine." Evan nudged Courtney. "See? Told you. The guest room is huge. We could fit a king bed in there. Maybe we will just move in someday." "Huh? Save on rent?" He laughed. Courtney smiled, a small, tight expression. "Yeah," she said softly. "It would be nice to have a backyard for Mason." The room went quiet for a beat. It was a joke. I knew it was a joke, but in the Griffin family, jokes were often trial balloons, sent up to test the wind direction. I waited for my mother to correct them, to say, "Do not be silly. Alice has worked hard for her privacy." Instead, Linda beamed. "Well, family helps family," she said. "That is the rule." I felt a cold prickle of unease at the base of my spine. I picked up a tray of bruschetta. "Everyone hungry?" I asked. Loudly. The moment passed, buried under the clatter of silverware and the scraping of chairs. But the unease stayed, sitting in my stomach like a stone. By the time coffee was served, I was exhausted. I wanted everyone to leave so I could sweep the floor and reclaim my territory. As people started putting on their coats, my father, Gerald, approached me by the front door. He was a soft-spoken man who avoided conflict by letting my mother steer the ship. But he often acted as the enforcer of her will. He dug into his pocket and pulled out a generic silver keychain. "Great party, kiddo," he said, patting my shoulder. "Listen, your mom and I were talking. Since you are living alone now, it is not safe for you to be the only one with access. What if you slip in the shower? What if there is a fire?" I stiffened. "Dad, I am fine. I have lived alone in apartments for 10 years. Apartments have supers," he countered. "Houses have emergencies. I will just hold on to a spare set, for peace of mind." He held out his hand. I looked at his palm, then at his face. His eyes were kind, crinkled with genuine concern. He did not look like a villain. He looked like a dad who wanted to make sure his daughter did not die alone on a bathroom floor. I hesitated. I did not want to give him a key. The thought of it made my chest tight. But I also did not want to be the difficult daughter, the one who rejected love, the one who made a scene at her own housewarming. Before I could answer, Linda bustled over, buttoning her coat. "And I will take a set too," she added breezily, as if it were already decided. "For when we drop off groceries, or if I see something on sale for the house. You are working so much. Alice, you will not be able to be here for deliveries." "Mom, really, I do not think—" I started. "Oh, do not be selfish." "Alice," she snapped, though she covered it with a chuckle. "We are just trying to help. Do you want your father to worry himself sick? I looked at Courtney and Evan, who were waiting by the door. Courtney looked bored. Evan was checking his phone. I felt cornered. If I said no, I was paranoid and ungrateful. If I said yes, I lost a piece of my perimeter. Fine, I said, my voice tight. But please, call before you use them. I mean it. I do not want people walking in on me. Linda rolled her eyes, snatching the keys from the bowl where I had foolishly left them. We are not people, Alice. We are your parents. She kissed my cheek, leaving a smear of lipstick and the lingering scent of perfume. Enjoy the house, honey. It really is perfect for us. The first violation happened 3 weeks later. I came home from work on a Tuesday, my brain fried from a day of spreadsheets. I unlocked the front door, dropped my bag, and walked into the kitchen, dreaming of the leftover Thai food I had saved for dinner. I opened the refrigerator and stopped. My Thai food was pushed to the back. The front shelf was crowded with a gallon of whole milk. I drank oat milk, 2 pounds of ground beef, a block of cheddar cheese, and a plastic container of potato salad from the deli. I stared at the items, my heart doing a strange stutter step. I had not bought these. I pulled out my phone and texted the family group chat. Did someone stop by my house? The reply came 2 minutes later from Linda. Saw you were low on staples. Dad and I were in the neighborhood. Put some real food in there. You look thin. I stared at the screen. I was not low on staples. I was low on the things they like to eat. I typed back, "Thanks, Mom. But please text me next time. It scared me to see things moved around." Her reply was a single thumbs up emoji. 2 days later, I came home to find my living room transformed. The sleek geometric gray pillows I had ordered online were gone. In their place were 2 oversized, floral needlepoint pillows that looked like they belonged in a Victorian bed and breakfast. They clashed violently with my modern sofa. I found my original pillows stuffed into the coat closet. This time, I called her, "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Why are there floral pillows on my couch?" "Oh," she sounded bright, unbothered. "I found those at Marshall's. They warm up the room." "Alice, it looks so sterile in there, like a dentist's office." "I like the sterile look," I said, clutching the phone. "That is my style. Please do not rearrange my furniture." "Alice, you are being dramatic. It is just pillows. I was trying to make it nice for you." I hung up, feeling like a petulant teenager. I took the floral pillows and shoved them in the back of the guest room closet. I put my gray ones back. The following week, the landscaper showed up. I was working from home, sitting at my dining table with my laptop, when I heard the roar of an engine. I looked out the window to see a man I did not know riding a zero-turn mower across my front lawn. I ran outside in my socks. "Excuse me," I yelled over the engine noise. "Excuse me." The man cut the engine and pulled off his ear protection. He looked annoyed. "Yeah? Who are you?" I asked. "I did not hire a service. Mrs. Griffin hired me," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Said to come by every Tuesday, tidy up the edges. She paid for the month." My face burned. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Miller next door was peering through her blinds. "My mother hired you," I corrected. "I am the owner, and I enjoy mowing my own lawn." The guy shrugged. "Look, lady." The check cleared. "You want me to stop? Take it up with her." "But I'm finishing this cut." He put his headphones back on and revved the engine. I went back inside and sat at my table, trembling. It was not about the grass. It was about the assumption that I was incompetent, that my ownership was a technicality, and that the real adults were still in charge. I drove to their house that evening. I needed to set a hard boundary. I had rehearsed the speech in the car. "I love you. But this is my house. If you cannot respect my rules, I will have to take the keys back. I found them in the den." The TV was blaring a cable news channel. "Alice," Gerald said, looking up from his recliner. "Did the lawn guy come? Yard looks better. Does it not?" "Dad, Mom, we need to talk," I said, standing in the doorway. I did not sit down. I needed the height advantage. Linda looked up from her knitting. "You sound serious. Is everything okay at work?" "Work is fine. This is about the house." I took a breath. "I appreciate the gestures. The groceries, the pillows, the lawn. I know you think you are helping, but you have to stop coming over when I'm not there. And you cannot hire people to work on my property without asking me. It is inappropriate. Linda put her knitting down slowly. The room went silent, save for the murmuring of the TV. Inappropriate? She repeated, testing the word like it was sour milk. Yes, I said. It makes me feel like a guest in my own home. I need you to text me before you come over. Every time. Linda looked at Gerald. Then she looked back at me, her eyes filling with instant, weaponized tears. We are just trying to help you. She wobbled. We thought you would want us involved. Most daughters would be grateful to have parents who care enough to fill their fridge. She pulled a tissue from her sleeve. I feel like you are pushing us away. Alice, ever since you got that deed, you have been so cold, Gerald chimed in, his voice stern. Your mother is right. Alice, you are being overly independent. We are a family. We do not need permission slips to see each other. You are hurting her feelings over a lawnmower. I stood there, the speech I had rehearsed crumbling in my mind. They were twisting it. They always twisted it. Suddenly, I was not the homeowner asking for privacy. I was the cruel daughter making her mother cry. I am not trying to be cold. I stammered, losing ground. I just want some autonomy. Then stop acting like a stranger, Gerald boomed. Keep the groceries. Enjoy the lawn. Stop looking for fights where there are none. I left 10 minutes later. I still had not taken the keys back. The breaking point, or what should have been the breaking point, came on a Sunday, a month after I moved in. We were at a diner downtown for a family lunch. It was a monthly tradition. Me, my parents, Courtney, Evan, and usually an aunt or uncle. This time it was cousin Sarah, who was in town for a conference. Courtney was in a bad mood. She was picking at her pancakes, snapping at Evan every time he tried to speak. Evan looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes. I tried to make conversation. So, Sarah, how is the new job? I asked. Sarah smiled. It is great, but honestly, I am jealous of you guys. She gestured to the table. Must be nice to have everything settled. I mean, Alice has the house, and now Courtney has housing security knowing Alice has a house. It is just nice. You guys have a real safety net. I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth. I looked at Sarah. What do you mean? Sarah looked confused. She glanced at Linda, then back to me. Oh, just, that the family has a place. Linda was telling me how relieved she was that if anything happened with Evan's job. The family has a landing pad now. The table went dead silent. I looked at Linda. She was suddenly very interested in her scrambled eggs. I looked at Courtney. She refused to meet my eyes, staring out the window. I laughed. It was a sharp, jagged sound. Housing security? I repeated. Sarah, I live there, alone. It is a 3-bedroom house, not a hostel. Linda looked up. Her face flushed. It was just a figure of speech. Alice, Linda snapped, her voice too loud for the diner. Sarah, honestly, you make it sound like we are plotting something. I just meant it is good the family has assets. That is all. Sarah looked mortified. Oh, I am sorry. I must have misunderstood. Evan let out a nervous chuckle. Yeah, we are good at the apartment. Just signed another year. All good. He was lying. I could tell by the way he fiddled with his napkin. The rest of the lunch was excruciating. I ate my food mechanically, my mind racing, housing security, landing pad. They had been talking about it. They had been discussing my home as a contingency plan for Courtney. The jokes at the housewarming, the keys, the boundary stomping. It was all part of a narrative I hadn't been allowed to read. I paid my share of the bill and walked to my car without saying goodbye to anyone but Sarah, driving home. The anger finally hit me. It started in my chest and radiated out to my fingertips. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I need to change the locks. I thought, I need to tell them to back off. I need to tell Courtney that my house is not her backup plan. I rehearsed the confrontation. I imagined screaming at Linda. I imagined demanding the keys back from Gerald. I imagined telling Courtney to grow up. I pulled into my driveway. The house sat there, sturdy and gray. The lawn was perfectly manicured. Thanks to the man I hadn't hired, I turned off the ignition. The silence of the car wrapped around me, and then the doubt crept in. Am I crazy? Maybe Sarah really did misunderstand. Maybe Linda was just bragging to make herself look good. If I confronted them now, based on a comment from a cousin, I would look paranoid. I would be the villain again. I would be the one tearing the family apart over nothing. I looked at the house. It was mine. They couldn't take it unless I let them. Pick your battles. Alice, I whispered to the empty car. Don't start a war over a rumor. I took a deep breath, unclenching my hands from the wheel. I decided to believe the lie because the truth was too exhausting to fight. I got out of the car, walked up the path, and unlocked the door. I threw the floral pillows off the couch, sat down in the silence, and told myself that everything was fine. I was wrong. The war had already started. I was just the only one who hadn't realized I was under siege. The seasons changed in Maplebridge, turning the lush green of summer into the brittle, dry brown of late autumn, and with the shift in weather came a shift in the digital atmosphere of the Griffin family. For years, our family group chat had been a ceaseless stream of consciousness. It was the place where Linda posted blurry photos of her garden. Gerald shared links to news articles behind paywalls that none of us could read. And Courtney uploaded endless videos of Mason doing mundane toddler things, eating a cracker, staring at a bug, sleeping. It was a digital ecosystem of low-stakes noise that required me to send a thumbs-up emoji at least twice a day to prove I was a participating member of the clan. But by October, the chat had gone quiet. The silence was not peaceful. It was heavy. Like the pressure drop before a thunderstorm. Linda stopped posting about her hydrangeas. Gerald stopped sending articles. And Courtney, who usually documented her life with the fervor of a reality star, went completely dark. I sat at my desk at Northline Creative, staring at my phone. The absence of notifications felt like a phantom limb. I scrolled back. The last message was from me. A photo of my newly painted front door. A deep, welcoming navy blue, sent 3 days ago. No one had reacted to it. Then, during my lunch break, I saw it. I was scrolling through social media, eating a sad salad at my desk, when a post from Courtney popped up. It was just a text graphic, white serif font on a black background. Hard seasons are God's way of teaching us resilience, trusting the process even when the path is dark. The caption was a single wilting flower emoji. My stomach turned over, in the dialect of suburban millennial women. Trusting the process was usually code for financial ruin or marital collapse. I closed my laptop and dialed her number. She picked up on the third ring. Her voice was thick, wet, the unmistakable sound of someone who had been crying into a pillow for hours. "Hey, Al," she croaked. "Court," I said, abandoning the pleasantries. "I saw your post. What is going on?" There was a long silence on the other end, punctuated by a ragged inhale. Then, the dam broke. "It is Evan," she sobbed. "It is everything." I listened for the next 20 minutes as she unspooled a disaster that had been months in the making. Evan's job at Harborline Auto, which he had bragged about endlessly at Christmas, was commission-based, apparently. The market had cooled, and Evan's charm, which he relied on more than his work ethic, was not moving inventory. He had not sold a car in 6 weeks. But that was not the worst of it. Our landlord at Oak Ridge came by yesterday. Courtney hiccuped. "They are raising the rent. $400 a month. Alice, we barely make the rent as it is. We are already dipping into the credit cards for groceries." I rubbed my temples. "That is illegal, isn't it? That much of a hike?" "New management," she said. "They can do whatever they want. We have 30 days to sign the new lease or vacate, and we have nowhere to go. We have no savings. Evan says it will turn around, but—" She trailed off, and I heard a fresh wave of tears gathering in her throat. "There is something else," she whispered. I waited, gripping my phone. I am pregnant. Alice. I stopped breathing for a second. Courtney and Evan could barely afford the child they had. Mason was 2, a sweet but demanding ball of energy who needed diapers and daycare. I just found out, she cried. I am 8 weeks along. How are we supposed to bring a baby into this? We are going to be homeless. Alice, homeless with kids. I cannot have Mason living in a car. I cannot be pregnant in a shelter. The raw panic in her voice clawed at me. Despite everything, the favoritism, the spoiling, the uneven playing field of our childhoods, she was my little sister. Hearing her terrified triggered a primal instinct in me, the same one that made me hold her hand when we crossed the street 30 years ago. It is going to be okay, I said, my voice engaging in the automatic soothing cadence I had been trained to use. You are not going to be homeless. Mom and Dad will help. We will figure it out. Mom and Dad are panicking too, she said miserably. We told them last night. Mom just cried. That explained the silence in the group chat. The Griffins did not broadcast failure. We hid it until we could repackage it as a challenge we had overcome. Listen, I said, we will talk. We will figure this out. Just breathe. I hung up feeling sick. I looked around my office, at the neat stacks of paper, the dual monitors, the framed photo of my house. I felt a sudden, sharp guilt for my own stability, a sensation I knew was irrational but could not shake. I had savings. I had a spare room. I had peace. And my sister had nothing. 2 days later, the summon came. Linda texted, "Family dinner tonight at our place. Roast beef, 6 p.m. Please be on time." Alice, it was not an invitation. It was a court date. I arrived at my parents' house at 5:55. The house smelled of rosemary and pot roast, the scent of my childhood Sundays, but the air in the kitchen was brittle. Gerald was carving the meat with surgical concentration. Linda was stirring gravy, her movements jerky and aggressive. Courtney and Evan were already seated at the dining table. Looking like 2 teenagers waiting for the principal, Evan looked bad. He had lost weight, and his usual cocky grin was replaced by a nervous tic in his jaw. Courtney looked pale, her hands resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Hello, everyone," I said, putting a bottle of red wine on the counter. Linda didn't look up. "Grab the rolls. Alice, they are burning." We ate in silence for the first 10 minutes. The only sounds were the scraping of forks against china and Mason babbling from his high chair. He was the only one unaware that the ground beneath us was shifting. Finally, Linda put her fork down. She wiped her mouth with a napkin. Precise and deliberate. "We need to talk about a family solution," she announced. She did not say Courtney's problem. She said, family solution. The language of collectivism always emerged when Courtney needed something. When I needed something, it was usually a personal journey. I took a sip of water. Bracing myself, "You all know the situation," Linda continued, her eyes sweeping the table but landing, inevitably, on me. "Evan has hit a rough patch. The housing market is cruel, and with the new baby coming," she let the words hang there, heavy with implication. "We cannot let them be out on the street," Gerald added, his voice gruff. "That is not what Griffins do." "Of course not," I said, keeping my voice steady. "They can stay here. Right? You guys have the empty nest. The basement is finished." I watched the suggestion land and die instantly. Linda sighed, a sound of staged exhaustion. "Alice, you know that is not feasible. Your father's knees can't take the stairs to move things around. And my craft room is down there. It is full of inventory for the church bazaar. There is simply no room for a family of 3. Soon to be 4. She looked at me. Her eyes were not pleading. They were expectant. "We were thinking," she said, her voice dropping to a casual, conversational register, "that since you have so much space over at your place, it would be the perfect temporary landing spot." The world tilted slightly to the left. I looked at Courtney. She was staring at her mashed potatoes, refusing to meet my gaze. I looked at Evan. He was studying the grain of the wood table. My place? I repeated. Just for a little while, Linda said quickly. Just until they get back on their feet. You have 3 bedrooms. Alice, you are one person. It is just logic. Gerald nodded, chiming in with the tag team rhythm they had perfected over 40 years of marriage. It really is the best option. Kiddo, you have a stable job. You have no kids yet. You are in a position to help. Frankly, you are the only one in a position to help. The phrase, no kids yet, stung. It was thrown out not as a fact, but as a disqualifier for my need for space, because my womb was empty. My house should be full. I felt the ambush closing in. They had discussed this. They had staged this dinner not to brainstorm, but to deliver a verdict. I don't know, I said, stuttering. My voice sounded small in the room. I just moved in. I am still unpacking. It is a small house. Mom, it is 1,200 square feet. It is not a mansion. It is bigger than an apartment, Evan muttered. I looked at him. He looked away. I tried to rally my defenses. I worked from home 3 days a week. I needed quiet. I had a routine. The idea of a toddler, a newborn, and a married couple squeezing into my sanctuary made my chest tighten to the point of pain. I do not mind helping in an emergency, I said, measuring my words. If it is just for a few weeks, like 2 or 3 weeks while you find a new apartment, I can do that. Linda smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was the smile of a negotiator who senses weakness. Oh, Alice, she said softly. 2 weeks is nothing. You cannot put a timeline on getting back on your feet. Courtney is pregnant. She needs stability. We were thinking, maybe until the baby comes, and then a few months after, just until they are settled. My jaw dropped. The baby was due in 6 months. A few months after? She was talking about a year. A year of my life. Mom, that is not temporary, I said, my voice rising. That is a roommate situation. That is a year. I cannot have a family living with me for a year. I have a life. I have work. Gerald slammed his hand down on the table. The silverware jumped. Mason started to cry. Alice, he barked. Lower your voice. I shrank back. The reflex instant. You are being selfish, Gerald said, his voice dropping to a disappointed rumble. We are talking about your sister, your nephew, your unborn niece or nephew. And you are worried about… What? Your work calls? I am worried about my bills. Dad, I said, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. Who is paying for the water? The heat? The groceries? Evan isn't working. He is working, Courtney snapped, her head snapping up. Her eyes were wet and angry. He is trying. Alice, do not be a snob. I am not being a snob. I said, I am being realistic. I have a mortgage. I have a budget. You are overthinking it, Gerald said dismissively, waving his hand as if swatting away a fly. You always do this. Alice, you count pennies while your family is drowning. Do you know that in tougher countries, families share one room? Generations living together. They do not complain about privacy. They are grateful to be together. The shame washed over me, hot and prickly. It was a classic Gerald maneuver. Compare my legitimate American anxieties to the suffering of the global poor to make me feel like a spoiled brat. We are not in a tougher country. Dad, I whispered, we are in Maplebridge. So act like it, Linda said sharply. Act like a person who has been blessed and wants to share it. We are not asking you to sign over the deed. Alice, we are asking you to let your sister use the empty rooms that are just gathering dust. Empty rooms, my office, my guest room, my sanctuary. The table fell silent again, save for Linda cooing at Mason to quiet him down. We do not need an answer tonight, Linda said, her tone shifting back to benevolent matriarch. Just think about it, pray on it, but honestly. Alice, I do not see what other choice we have, unless you want your sister in a shelter. The guilt was a physical weight, pressing on my lungs. I cleared the table after dinner. It was my penance for having hesitated. I washed the dishes while Courtney dried. The silence between us was thick. I looked at her. She looked exhausted. Her skin was sallow, and her hair, usually perfectly blown out, was pulled back in a messy bun. "Court," I said softly, "I really am worried about the space. It is going to be tight." She put down the plate she was drying and turned to me. Then, she did the one thing I was defenseless against. She hugged me. She buried her face in my shoulder, smelling of baby powder and fear. "I know." She mumbled into my shirt. "I know it is a lot to ask, but I am scared. Alice, I am really scared." I stiffened, then slowly wrapped my arms around her. "Thank you for even considering it." She whispered, "You have always been the good one, the strong one." She pulled back, wiping her eyes, and offered a watery smile. I told Mason on the drive over. She said, I froze. "You what?" "I told him we might be moving into Aunt Alice's cool house." She said, "He got so excited. He loves your backyard. He keeps asking if he can play with the dog next door." My blood ran cold. She had weaponized the toddler. If I said no now, I wasn't just rejecting my sister. I was the villain in my nephew's story. I was the reason he couldn't play in the cool backyard. "I did not promise anything," Courtney added quickly. Seeing my face, I just said, "Maybe," but maybe to a 2-year-old was a promise, and maybe to Courtney was a yes. I drove home in a daze. The streets of Maplebridge were quiet. The houses dark and self-contained. Everyone else was safe behind their locked doors. Everyone else had boundaries. When I walked into my house, the silence hit me differently than it had on move-in day. It didn't feel like freedom anymore. It felt like a vacuum waiting to be filled. I checked my phone. There was a voicemail from Linda. I sat on my couch, in the dark, and played it on speaker. "Alice, it's Mom." Her voice filled the room, echoing slightly off the hardwood floors. "I just wanted to say, I know we were hard on you tonight, but it is only because we know what a good heart you have." A pause, a sigh. "I was thinking about when you were 10. Do you remember? You wanted that ballet camp so badly. But Courtney had just gotten into the competitive dance troupe, and we couldn't afford both. You gave up your camp without us even asking. You said, 'Let Courtney go. She is better at it anyway.'" I closed my eyes. I remembered that day. I remembered crying in my closet for 3 hours. I had not offered. Gerald had told me it would be noble to step aside. "We raised you girls to support each other." Linda's voice continued, thick with emotion. "That is the Griffin way. You sacrificed then. And it made you into the wonderful, selfless woman you are. I know you will do the right thing. Love you." The message ended. I sat there, the phone vibrating in my hand. My head began to throb. A sharp line of pain behind my left eye. A migraine. She had rewritten history. She had turned my childhood disposability into a virtue. She was framing my erasure as my greatest strength. I stood up and walked through the house, my house. I went into the guest room. It was painted a soft sage green. I had a daybed in there, a bookshelf filled with my favorite novels, and a yoga mat in the corner. I closed my eyes and reimagined it. I saw a crib jammed against the wall. I saw a changing table smelling of diaper pail. I saw boxes of Evan's clothes stacked in the corner. I saw the yoga mat rolled up and shoved under a bed to make room for a bouncy chair. I walked into the living room. I saw my cream rug stained with apple juice. I saw Evan's PlayStation wired into my television, wires trailing across the floor. I heard the sound of cartoons blaring at 7 on a Saturday morning. I saw Evan sleeping on my couch at noon because he was between opportunities. I walked into the kitchen. I saw the sink full of dishes that weren't mine. I saw the fridge crowded with milk I didn't drink. I saw my bottle of expensive wine uncorked and half empty because Evan needed a glass. I realized, with a terrifying clarity, that if I let them in, I would cease to exist in my own home. I would become a guest in their chaos. My sanctuary would be swallowed whole. And yet, the alternative was the image of Courtney crying in a motel room, the image of Mason sleeping in a car seat, the image of my parents telling every relative, every church member, every neighbor, that Alice Griffin had turned her pregnant sister away in the snow. I was trapped. I was trapped between the reality of my needs and the mythology of my family. I went to my bedroom and crawled under the duvet, fully clothed. The migraine pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I knew the answer was no. Every cell in my body was screaming no. But as I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, I knew I didn't have the strength to say it. I had spent 32 years being the good daughter, and I didn't know how to be anyone else. I rolled over and stared at the ceiling. Just a few months. I lied to myself. I can handle a few months, but deep down, in the pit of my stomach where the anxiety lived, I knew the truth. If I gave them the key, I would never get it back. The morning after the dinner, I woke up with a headache that felt like a physical clamp around my skull. The image of Courtney's tear-streaked face and the echo of my mother's voice about family sacrifice had been on a loop in my dreams. I made coffee. Staring at the empty expanse of my kitchen counters, the counters I had paid for, the counters I kept clean, and felt a wave of preemptive exhaustion. I knew I could not simply say no in the Griffin family. A flat no was interpreted as a declaration of war. It was viewed as a character flaw, a symptom of selfishness that needed to be prayed away or argued into submission. So, I decided to do what I did best at Northline Creative. I decided to manage the project. I would offer a compromise. I would wrap my boundaries in the language of help so they could not accuse me of abandoning my sister. I sat at my dining table and drafted a text to the family group chat. I typed it, deleted it, and typed it again. It had to be precise. It had to be airtight. "Hi, everyone." I typed, "I have been thinking a lot about the situation with Courtney and Evan. I want to help. I am willing to let them stay in the guest room. But for my own mental health and work schedule, I need to set some ground rules so we all stay friends. The stay would be for a maximum of 8 weeks. We need a written plan for chores and a contribution to utilities since water and electric will go up. I need everyone to agree to this in writing so there are no misunderstandings later." I read it over. It was reasonable. It was generous. Actually, 8 weeks was 2 months of free rent. It gave them time to find a cheaper apartment, or for Evan to find a new job. It was a lifeline, not a lifestyle. I hit send. I put the phone down and waited. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I felt proud of myself. I had offered a solution. I had stepped up. The response came 4 minutes later. It was not a thank you. It was a wall of text from Linda. "Alice, I have to say I am crying reading this. I am literally in tears. Your sister is in crisis. She is pregnant. She is scared. And you are talking about utilities and written plans? You sound so cold, so transactional, like you are renting a room to a stranger on the internet instead of opening your home to your own flesh and blood. We raised you to be a loving sister, not a landlord. Do you really want to present your sister with a contract while she is weeping? I thought you were better than this." I stared at the screen, my mouth open. Cold? Transactional? I was offering them a home. Before I could type a defense, Gerald chimed in. "Not everything needs a contract. Kiddo, family operates on trust. Just let them in and we will figure out the details as we go. Do not make this harder than it needs to be." I threw my phone across the couch. It bounced off the cushion and landed on the rug. They had completely sidestepped the offer. They didn't want 8 weeks. They didn't want rules. They wanted a blank check. By refusing to agree to terms, they were effectively telling me that they intended to have none. I did not reply. I couldn't. If I typed what I was thinking, I would burn the bridge permanently. 3 days passed in a tense silence. I went to work. I came home. I checked the locks. I felt like a sentry in a tower, waiting for the barbarian horde to crest the hill. On Thursday, I left work early. I had a package delivered to my parents' house, a birthday gift for a friend that I didn't want sitting on my porch, and I needed to pick it up. I didn't call ahead. I had a key to their house, a relic of my childhood that felt increasingly heavy on my keychain. I pulled into their driveway. Linda's car was there. Gerald's truck was gone. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the foyer. The house was quiet. smelling of lemon polish and stale potpourri. I was about to call out, "Mom, it's me," when I heard her voice coming from the sunroom. She was on the phone. Her tone was bright, animated, the specific vocal register she used when she was bragging to her friends from the church social committee. "Oh, we are just so relieved," Linda was saying. "It has been a stressful month. But you know how girls are. They stick together." I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. "Yes, moving in next week, I think," she continued. "Alice has that lovely 3-bedroom place, and she is all alone over there. She has so much space she doesn't know what to do with it. She practically begged Courtney to come. She said, 'Mom, I want to be an auntie. I want to help with the baby.' It is really a blessing." My blood turned to ice in my veins. She practically begged? I listened, paralyzed, as she went on. "Well, it just makes sense. Why should Courtney pay rent to a stranger when family has a guest wing? And Alice doesn't mind. She is such a career girl. She is never home anyway. It will be good for her to have some life in that house. It is too quiet for a young woman." I felt a wave of nausea. She wasn't just lying. She was constructing an entire alternate reality where I was the enthusiastic architect of my own invasion. She was selling a version of me to the community, the selfless, lonely spinster sister who needed her family to fill her empty life. That made her look like the matriarch of a perfect, harmonious clan. If I walked in there now, if I confronted her, she would gasp. She would tell the person on the phone, "Oh, Alice just walked in." She would force me to play the part, or humiliate her in front of her friend. I couldn't do it. Cowardice, or perhaps self-preservation, seized me. I backed out of the door, closing it silently. I got back in my car and drove away without the package. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the wheel. I drove aimlessly for an hour, trying to process what I had heard. She doesn't mind. She practically begged. Later that night, the digital confirmation of Linda's narrative appeared. I was lying in bed, doom-scrolling, when Courtney's profile popped up. She had changed her bio. It used to say, "Wifey to Evan, Mama to Mason, Coffee Addict." Now it read, "Transitioning to our new chapter house emoji. Grateful for family. New beginnings." I clicked on her latest photo, a picture of Mason packing a toy box. The caption was vague. "Big changes coming. So excited for what is next." The comments were a chorus of validation. "So happy for you guys," wrote a cousin. "Can't wait to see the new place," wrote a friend from high school. And then, a comment from Mrs. Gable, the church choir director. "Your mom told me the news. Alice is such a sweet sister. You guys are going to have a ball living together." Courtney had liked the comment. She hadn't corrected it. She hadn't said, "Actually, we are still discussing it." She had liked it. It was a public contract signed without my signature, by letting the world believe it was happening. They were making it socially impossible for me to stop it. If I said no now, I wasn't just declining a request. I was evicting them from a home everyone thought they already had. I threw the duvet off and paced my bedroom. I felt trapped in a web of politeness and lies. I needed to hear it from Courtney. I needed to look her in the eye and ask her if she really thought I had agreed to this. I texted her, "Coffee tomorrow? Willow Street Cafe. Just us." She replied instantly, "Sure. 10 a.m.? She sounded breezy, innocent. Willow Street Cafe was a trendy spot with exposed brick walls and overpriced lattes. It was neutral ground. I arrived 10 minutes early and secured a table in the corner. Away from the espresso machine noise, Courtney walked in at 10:05. She looked better than she had at dinner. She was wearing makeup. Her hair was washed, and she was wearing a cute maternity top. She looked like a woman with a plan. "Hey," she chirped, sliding into the chair opposite me. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. "Thanks for meeting me. I needed a break from packing. Mason is tearing the apartment apart." I didn't smile. I wrapped my hands around my black coffee. "Packing?" I asked. She faltered slightly, her smile dimming by a fraction. "Well, yeah, putting things in boxes, getting organized." "Courtney," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "Where are you moving?" She looked down at her latte foam. She picked up a stirrer and swirled it nervously. "Well, we are still figuring out the exact logistics," she said vaguely, "but we know we have to leave Oak Ridge." I leaned forward. "Did you give notice?" I asked. She hesitated. "Courtney, did you give your landlord notice?" She bit her lip. "Yes. We gave notice on Monday." "Monday?" That was the day after the dinner. The day before I sent my text about the 8-week limit. "Why would you do that?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. "You don't have a lease signed anywhere else. You don't have a confirmation from me. Why would you make yourselves homeless voluntarily?" She looked up, her eyes wide and defensive. "Because Mom said it was all set," she blurted out. I stared at her. "What?" "Mom called me Monday morning," Courtney said, her words tumbling out fast. "She said she talked to you. She said you were just stressed about the details but that you were on board. She said, 'Go ahead and give notice. Alice is going to help.'" I felt the air leave the room. "I never said that," I whispered. "I never told Mom I was on board. I sent a text proposing a limited stay with a contract, and she called me cold. I never agreed to anything." Courtney's face crumpled, but she said it was handled. "She said you were just being Alice, worrying about rules, but that you wanted us there. She told Evan to start packing the truck." I sat back, feeling sick. Linda had triangulated us perfectly. She had told Courtney I was a yes. And she had told me Courtney was desperate, creating a momentum that neither of us felt empowered to stop. "Courtney," I said, "I need you to listen to me. I did not agree to you moving in. Not permanently. Not without conditions. Mom lied to you." Courtney's eyes filled with tears. "But we already gave notice. Alice, we have to be out by the 1st. We have nowhere else to go. You can't tell me this now. I am telling you now," I said, fighting the urge to apologize. "I am telling you because Mom is playing a game with our lives." Courtney wiped her eyes. "It's not a game, Alice. She's just trying to solve the problem. She knows you. She knows you'll do the right thing in the end. Why are you making this so hard?" I stood up. I couldn't do this. I couldn't sit there and be the villain because I refused to be the victim. I am not making it hard. "Courtney, I am trying to have a life." I walked out of the cafe, leaving her crying into her latte. I felt like a monster. But for the first time, I also felt like a monster who saw the trap. I drove straight home. I needed to be in my own space. I needed to touch my walls and remind myself that I owned them. I unlocked my front door and stepped inside. I locked the deadbolt behind me. I walked down the hallway to the kitchen, on the wall, by the garage door. I had a row of decorative hooks for keys. I usually kept my spare car key there, and the key to the shed. I stopped. Hanging on the third hook was a silver key. It had a neon pink plastic cap on the head. I stared at it. I didn't own a key with a pink cap. I reached out and took it. I walked to the front door. I slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. It was a key to my house. My stomach dropped. I had given my parents one spare set. Just one. Gerald had taken it. I pulled out my phone and called Linda. She answered on the second ring. "Hello?" "Darling?" "Mom," I said, my voice shaking. "Why is there a key with a pink cap hanging in my hallway?" There was a pause, a beat of silence that was just a fraction too long. "Oh," she said, her voice light and airy. "That must be Courtney's." "Courtney's?" I repeated. "Why does Courtney have a key to my house?" "Well, I had a copy made," Linda said, as if describing a trip to the grocery store. "When I had the set for Dad and me, I just thought, well, in case of emergencies, if we are out of town, Courtney should have access, to water your plants or check on things. I must have just forgotten to mention it." "Forgotten to mention it?" I shouted. "You duplicated my house key without asking me and gave it to my sister?" "Alice, calm down," she soothed. "It is just a piece of metal. Why are you so paranoid? Courtney is family. She's not going to rob you. She probably just left it there when she dropped by to measure the room." "To measure the room?" I felt like the walls were closing in. "She came by?" I asked. "When?" "Oh, the other day," Linda said vaguely. While you were at work, she just wanted to see if the crib would fit in the guest room. She didn't touch anything. Alice, goodness, you are acting like we are criminals. They had been in my house while I was at work. They had used the unauthorized key to let themselves in and measure my floor plan for an invasion I hadn't agreed to. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I just pressed the red button. I stood in my hallway, clutching the pink key so hard it bit into my palm. I felt violated. My home wasn't mine. It was a shared resource that they felt entitled to manage. I needed help, not from them, from a professional. I called the Maple Bridge Wellness Center. I had been meaning to find a therapist for anxiety for years, but I always put it off because of the cost. Now, the cost seemed irrelevant. I got an appointment for the next afternoon due to a cancellation. Doctor Reynolds was an older woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I sat on her beige couch and vomited the entire story for 45 minutes. I told her about the favoritism. I told her about the birthday parties I didn't get. I told her about the car I bought myself versus the car Courtney was given. I told her about the keys, the transactional accusation, and the measuring of the room. I told her I felt guilty. I told her I felt like a bad sister. Dr. Reynolds listened, taking small notes. When I finished, I was out of breath and crying. So, I said, wiping my nose, "Am I crazy? Am I being selfish? She is pregnant. She is my sister." Doctor Reynolds took off her glasses. "Alice," she said softly, "you have spent your entire life being the responsible one. Is that correct?" I nodded. "And in your family system, being responsible means absorbing the consequences of other people's choices. If Courtney fails, you succeed enough for both of you. If Courtney spends, you save. If Courtney falls, you are the net." "Yes," I whispered. "That is how it works. And you are praised for this." She continued. "You are told you are so mature. You are told you are the strong one. But that praise is a trap. It is the currency they use to buy your compliance." I stared at her. I had never thought of it that way. She leaned forward. "I want to ask you a question, Alice, and I want you to really think about it." She waited until I met her eyes. What would it mean to be the one who gets protected this time? The question hung in the air. Protected? Me? The idea was so foreign it was almost unintelligible. No one protected me. I protected myself. I protected them. Doctor Reynolds continued, "What if your mental health, your financial security, and your sanctuary were treated as precious? What if your parents protected your hard work instead of Courtney's lack of planning?" I started to cry again, but these weren't tears of guilt. They were tears of grief. I realized, in that quiet office, that my parents were never going to protect me. If I wanted protection, I had to build the wall myself. I left the session feeling raw, but for the first time, my spine felt solid. I went home. I sat at my computer. I opened my email client. I was not going to text. Texting was for chats. Texting was for cold and transactional accusations. I needed a record. I needed a document that could be printed and shown to a judge if necessary. I typed the recipients: Linda, Gerald, Courtney. Subject: clarification regarding housing arrangements. I took a deep breath and began to type. Dear Mom, Dad, and Courtney, I am writing this email to clear up the miscommunications that have happened over the last week. There seems to be a belief that I have agreed to let Courtney and Evan move into my home. I want to be explicitly clear. I have not agreed to this. While I love you all, and I want to support Courtney, I cannot be your housing plan. My home is not available for a move-in. The offer I made for a short-term emergency stay with a contract was rejected, and therefore, it is off the table. I am asking you to stop making plans that involve my property. Do not tell friends or landlords that Courtney is moving in with me. It is not happening. Any decisions you make about leases or moving trucks must assume that my house is not an option. I love you, but I need to protect my own stability. Sincerely, Alice. I read it 3 times. It was not mean. It was clear. It was the truth. I hit send. The silence that followed was terrifying. I sat in my office chair, watching the sun go down, waiting for the explosion. It didn't come that night. No one replied. No one called. The silence stretched into the next day, and then the next. It was a tactical silence. They were freezing me out. They were punishing me. But on the third day, the bubble burst. I was at work when I got a voicemail from Courtney. I saw the transcription on my screen first. Please call me back. It's bad. It's really bad. I went to the break room and dialed her number. Alice? She answered. She sounded hysterical. What is it? I asked. The landlord? She sobbed. We tried to take back our notice. We told him our plans fell through. We told him we wanted to renew the lease even with the rent hike. And he rented it. Alice, he signed a lease with someone else yesterday. It is gone. The apartment is gone. I closed my eyes. Okay, I said. Okay, that is bad. But you have until the 1st, right? That is 10 days. You can find a short-term rental. No, you don't understand, she screamed. There is nothing. Everything is too expensive or booked. And what? She took a ragged breath. When Mom talked to the landlord last week to help us out, she told him not to worry about us. She told him we had a guaranteed place. She told him we were moving into a family home and that we were excited to go. My hand gripped the phone so tight I thought the screen might crack. Linda had not just lied to Courtney. She had lied to the landlord to ensure the bridge was burned. She had deliberately destroyed Courtney's safety net to force her onto mine. She had calculated that if Courtney was truly, legally homeless, I would have no moral choice but to open the door. She told the landlord that? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. Yes, Courtney wept. She said she was just trying to help us make a clean break. But now we have nowhere to go. Alice, we are literally on the street in 10 days. You have to help us. You have to. I felt a coldness settle over me that I had never felt before. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. My parents had gambled with their pregnant daughter's housing. They had placed a bet on my guilt. They had looked at my boundaries and decided they were bluffing. Alice? Courtney pleaded. Are you there? I am here, I said. My phone beeped. It was a call coming in from Linda. Then another beep, a text from Gerald. Call your mother. Now. I looked at the notifications. I looked at the break room wall. Alice, Courtney screamed. Say something. I am sorry. Courtney, I said. I really am. I hung up. I stood there, staring at my phone. It buzzed again. Linda calling. 79 missed calls. That was the number that would end up on my screen by the end of the weekend. But right now, it was just the first one. I declined the call. I realized then that I wasn't destroying my family. My family had already destroyed itself. I was just the one who refused to be buried in the rubble. I put the phone in my pocket and walked back to my desk. I had work to do. And for the first time in my life, I was going to let the responsible one be responsible only for herself. The silence that followed my email was not the peaceful silence of a resolution. It was the suffocating, heavy silence of a held breath. For 3 days, my phone did not ring. The group chat remained dormant. There were no guilt-tripping monologues from Linda, no gruff dismissals from Gerald, and no tearful pleas from Courtney. I went to work. I came home. I watered my plants. I tried to convince myself that the silence meant they were finally respecting my boundary. I told myself they were taking time to cool off, to formulate a plan B, to realize that they could not bully me into submission. I was wrong. The silence was not a retreat. It was a cover-up. On Thursday afternoon, I arrived home to find a peach-colored slip from the post office stuck to my front door. Sorry we missed you. It read, Certified mail. Signature required. I frowned. I was not expecting anything. My student loans were on autopay. My mortgage was with Northlake Home Finance, and they always communicated via their secure portal. I drove to the post office branch on Main Street before they closed, standing in line behind a man mailing a package of golf clubs. When I finally reached the counter, The clerk handed me a stiff white envelope with a return address I did not recognize. Redwood Crest Lending. P.O. Box 490, Omaha, Nebraska. I signed for it, my pen scratching against the electronic pad, and took it to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and tore open the flap. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded in thirds. It was a formal notice, the kind generated by a computer without human intervention. Dear property owner, this letter is to inform you that the application for a cash-out refinance on the property located at 424 Maplewood Drive has been declined due to insufficient debt-to-income ratio on the part of the co-applicants. Gerald and Linda Griffin, as the primary title holder, no action is needed on your part, but we are required to notify all parties listed on the deed of the credit decision. I read the paragraph twice, then a third time. The words swam before my eyes, refusing to assemble into a coherent sentence. Co-applicants, Gerald and Linda Griffin, all parties listed on the deed. A cold prickle of sweat broke out on the back of my neck. This had to be a mistake, a scam, a clerical error where someone typed the wrong address. My parents were not co-applicants. My parents were not on the deed. I had bought the house alone. I had qualified alone. I paid the mortgage alone. I pulled out my phone and dialed the customer service number at the bottom of the letter, my fingers trembling slightly. Redwood Crest Lending. Please hold. I sat in the stifling heat of my car for 20 minutes, listening to a looped saxophone melody, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Finally, a human voice clicked on. Redwood Crest. This is Jason. How can I help you? Hi, I said, my voice sounding thin and reedy. I just received a letter about a refinance application for my home, but I never applied for a refinance. Jason typed something in the background. Okay. Can I have the file number on the letter? I gave it to him. Okay, I see it here, Jason said, his voice bored. Application date. October 14th. Applicants. Gerald Griffin and Linda Griffin. Collateral. 30% interest in the property at 424 Maplewood Drive. I gripped the steering wheel. There is a mistake. I said, I am the owner, Alice Griffin. I am the only owner. My parents have no interest in this house. There was a pause. The typing stopped. Ma'am, Jason said, his tone shifting from bored to cautious. According to the title search we pulled during the underwriting process, there is a quitclaim deed recorded with the Maple County Clerk. It lists you, Gerald Griffin, and Linda Griffin as owners. They tried to borrow against their share. We denied it because their income is retired, and they have existing debt. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The air left my lungs in a rush. A quitclaim deed? I whispered. Yes, ma'am. Recorded 3 months ago. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I couldn't breathe. I drove home like a person in a trance. I ran into my house, ignoring the cat weaving between my legs, and went straight to my filing cabinet. I ripped open the hanging folder labeled House. I pulled out my closing documents from 6 months ago, the heavy bonded paper of the warranty deed. Grantee, Alice Griffin, a single woman. It was there, black and white. I was the sole owner, but the man on the phone had said recorded 3 months ago. I looked at my calendar. 3 months ago. That was July. That was right after the housewarming party. Right after the jokes about the family guest wing. Right after I gave my father the spare key. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching the street, waiting for a police car or a moving van or the sky to fall. The next morning, I called Northline Creative and told them I had a family emergency. It wasn't a lie. I drove to the Maple County Recorder's office. It was a drab, brick building downtown, smelling of floor wax and stale coffee. I walked up to the counter, my purse clutched to my chest like a shield. Can I help you? The clerk asked. She was a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a chain, looking at me over the rim of her computer monitor. I need to see the deed for my house, I said. My voice was steady, but my knees were shaking. 424 Maplewood Drive. She typed it in. Which one? She asked. What do you mean? Which one? I asked. There are 3 recent filings. she said. One from the purchase in March, and two from July. Two? Can I see the ones from July? I asked. She clicked a button. That will be $2 per page to print. I don't care. I said. Print them. The printer whirred behind her. It sounded like a chainsaw in the quiet room. She grabbed the stack of warm paper and slid it across the counter. I took them to a plastic bench against the wall and sat down. The first document was titled, Quitclaim Deed, Grantor, Alice Griffin, Grantees, Alice Griffin, Gerald Griffin, and Linda Griffin, as joint tenants with rights of survivorship. The document stated that for the sum of $10 and other good and valuable consideration, I, Alice Griffin, hereby transferred a 30% ownership interest in my home to my parents. I looked at the bottom of the page. There was my signature, Alice Griffin. I stared at it. It looked like my signature. The loop of the A was right, the sharp cross of the F's, but the E at the end trailed off in a way I never did. It was shaky. It looked like my signature if I had signed it while standing up, or while drunk. I looked at the date, July 12th. I pulled out my phone and checked my calendar for July 12th. I was at a marketing conference in Chicago. I was 400 miles away on July 12th. I looked at the notary stamp, Rita Halpern, Notary Public, Commission expires, 2028. Brookstone Mail Title, 1402 Oak Street. Brookstone Mail Title was a shipping storefront on the other side of town. I had never set foot in it. I used the post office near my work. I felt bile rise in my throat. They had forged it. They had literally forged my signature. I turned the page to the second document. This one was dated July 15th, 3 days later. Quitclaim Deed, Grantors, Gerald Griffin and Linda Griffin, Grantees, Courtney Marsh and Evan Marsh. Description: transfer of 30% undivided interest in the property located at 424 Maplewood Drive. I read it again, my brain screaming in protest. My parents had used the forged deed to put themselves on my title, and then, 3 days later, they had transferred their stolen share to Courtney and Evan. They hadn't just planned to move Courtney in. They had legally, or illegitimately, given her a piece of my house. They had tried to make her an owner. That was why Linda was so confident. That was why she told the landlord it was a guaranteed place. That was why she told the friend on the phone that it is really all of ours, in their minds. It was theirs. They had stolen it, stamped it, and filed it. I felt faint. The room grayed at the edges. I put my head between my knees, breathing in the scent of industrial carpet cleaner. A security guard took a step toward me. Miss, you okay? I sat up. No, I said, I am not okay. I gathered the papers. I didn't go home. I couldn't go home. I felt like the house was tainted. A crime scene I was still living in. I drove to the office of Harris Rowan Legal. It was a small firm in a converted Victorian house near the courthouse. I didn't have an appointment, but the receptionist took one look at my face, pale, sweating, eyes wild, and buzzed me back. Naomi Harris was a woman in her 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes and a bob cut that looked like it could cut glass. She ushered me into her office and handed me a bottle of water. Breathe. She said, tell me what happened. I put the papers on her desk. I didn't say a word. I just pointed at the signatures. She put on her glasses and read them. She read them slowly, her face impassive. When she finished the second deed, she looked up at me. Did you sign this? She asked, tapping the first document. No, I whispered. I was in Chicago. Do you know this notary? Rita Halpern? I have never met her. Naomi leaned back in her chair. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. Alice, she said, her voice dropping an octave, becoming grave. This is not a family dispute. This is a felony. This is forgery, grand larceny, and deed fraud. I nodded, tears finally spilling over. They stole my house. I choked out. Naomi shook her head. They tried to. But this creates a massive problem for you. Even though the deed is forged, it is recorded. That means the public record shows that Courtney and Evan own 30% of your property. She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto mine. Do you know what that means? It means if Evan has creditors, and usually people in his situation do, they can attach a lien to your house. If they get sued, your house is an asset. If they divorce, your house is marital property. I gasped. I hadn't even thought of that. And, Naomi continued, ruthlessly practical. It means they believe they have a legal right to enter the premises. If they show up with a locksmith in this deed, the police might not stop them. They might call it a civil matter. The room spun. What do I do? I asked. Do I call the police? Naomi paused. You can, she said, and eventually, you might have to. But right now, we need to secure the property and build the case. If we tip them off today that you know, they might try to leverage the situation or destroy evidence. She opened a notepad. Here's the plan, she said. First, you change the locks. Today, immediately. Do not use a locksmith they know. Do it yourself, or hire a commercial security company. Second, you secure these originals. Do not leave them in the house. She looked at me. Do you have a safe place to go if things get volatile? I don't know. I stammered. Okay, stay in the house for now, because possession is 9/10 of the law. But you need to be vigilant. She started typing on her laptop. I am going to draft an affidavit of forgery. We will file it immediately to flag the title. It warns any future lenders or buyers that the deed is contested. She stopped typing and looked at me with a softness I hadn't expected. Alice, she said, I need to be very clear with you. To fix this, to really scrub this from the record, you will likely have to sue your parents. And if the prosecutor picks it up, they could face jail time. Forgery of a public record is a serious crime. I stared at her. Jail? My mother in an orange jumpsuit? My father in handcuffs? I don't want them in jail, I whispered. I just want my house back. Naomi nodded. I understand. But once we pull this thread, we cannot control where it unravels. You need to be prepared for that. I left her office an hour later with a retainer agreement signed and a list of instructions. My first stop was the hardware store. I bought 3 heavy-duty deadbolts and a new handle set for the front door. I bought window locks. I bought a doorbell camera. I drove home. I parked in the garage and closed the door before I got out of the car. For the next 2 hours, I worked in a fever state. I unscrewed the old locks, the locks my parents had keys to, and threw them in the trash. I installed the new ones, the drill whining in the quiet house. As I turned the thumb turn on the new front door lock, hearing the heavy steel bolt slide into place with a solid thunk, I felt a strange, dark thrill. It was the thrill of control. For 32 years, my boundaries had been suggestions. My privacy had been a privilege they granted and revoked at will. But this deadbolt? This was physics. This was steel. They could not guilt-trip this lock. They could not manipulate this mechanism. I sat on the floor of my foyer, clutching the new brass keys. I felt safe, and then, immediately, I felt a crushing wave of grief. I was locking out my mother. I was locking out the woman who had taught me to tie my shoes, the woman who had made me soup when I had the flu. I was treating my parents like intruders because they had become intruders. I stood up and wiped the sawdust off my pants. I needed to hide the spares. Naomi had said not to give them to anyone, but I couldn't risk locking myself out. I drove to Northline Creative. It was after hours, but I knew Maya Leonard would still be there. Maya was the senior data analyst, a woman with a dry wit and a life that had nothing to do with my family drama. I walked into her cubicle. She looked up, surprised. Alice? I thought you had an emergency. I do. I said. I put a single key on her desk. Maya, I need you to do me a huge favor. I need you to keep this key. Do not give it to anyone. Not my parents, not my sister, not the police, only me. Maya looked at the key, then at my face. She didn't ask a single question. She didn't say, "Is everything okay?" or "You look terrible." She opened her purse, put the key in a zippered interior pocket, and zipped it shut. "Consider it done," she said. I could have hugged her. I went back home. The house felt different now. It was a fortress. I made tea. But I didn't drink it. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I logged into the desktop version of our family group chat. I needed to see the timeline. I needed to understand how they had done this. I scrolled back to July 10th, 2 days before the forgery. Linda, Alice, so proud of you for the house. Dad and I were talking, and we really want to make sure your investment is protected for the future. We are meeting with a financial planner to see how we can all support each other. I had replied, Thanks, Mom, appreciate it. I had thought she meant life insurance. July 12th, the day of the forgery. Gerald, just ran some errands for the family today, taking care of business. Feels good to have things in order. Linda, heart emoji. I felt sick. Taking business meant driving to a strip mall and forging my name. July 15th, the day they transferred the share to Courtney. Courtney, guys, I am just so stressed about money. Evan's job is so up and down. Linda, don't worry, sweetie. God provides, and your father and I are working on a safety net for you. Just trust us. We are making sure you always have a roof over your head. I had read that message back then and thought she meant they were lending her money. We are making sure you always have a roof over your head. They meant my roof. I scrolled forward to August, September. Linda, Alice, you really should let Dad handle the maintenance. It is better if we are all involved in the upkeep. Since it is really all for the family's future anyway. It wasn't a sentiment. It was a statement of legal intent. I saw the pattern now. Every guilt trip, every boundary violation, every joke about moving in. It wasn't just pushy parenting. It was an occupation strategy. They were acclimating me to the idea of sharing the house because, on paper, they had already decided it was shared. They had been gaslighting me for 3 months. I closed the laptop. I couldn't look at it anymore. I spread the printed deeds out on the kitchen table. The paper was stark white against the dark wood. Alice Griffin, Gerald Griffin, Linda Griffin, Courtney Marsh, Evan Marsh, all our names, bound together in a knot of fraud. My phone pinged. It was an email from Naomi. Alice, I have drafted the affidavit. I need you to come in tomorrow morning to sign it in front of a notary, a real one. Also, I spoke with a colleague in criminal law. He advises that if we want to stop them from trying to enter the home with a locksmith, filing a police report is the strongest move. It creates an official record that the deed is disputed as fraudulent. However, once you file a report for forgery, the state takes over. You cannot unpress charges if you change your mind later. Take tonight to think about it. I looked at the email, then I looked at the signature on the deed, the shaky, fake Alice that my mother or father had scrawled. I thought about Courtney crying on the phone today, terrified and homeless because Linda had lied to her landlord. My parents had not just hurt me, they had sabotaged Courtney. They had burned her life down to force her into mine. I realized then that filing the report wasn't an act of aggression. It was the only way to stop the fire they had started from burning the house down with all of us inside. I sat there in the silence of my locked home. The deeds spread out like a map of a war I hadn't known I was fighting, and I waited for the sun to come up. The bell above the door of Brookstone Mail Title jingled cheerfully as I walked in, a sound that felt jarringly innocent given the mission I was on. The shop smelled of cardboard and packing tape. It was one of those strip mall utility stores that did everything: shipping, passport photos, key duplication, and apparently, notarizing felonies. I adjusted my sunglasses and walked to the counter. I was shaking, but I had channeled that tremor into a performance of a harried, busy professional. Behind the counter stood a woman in her 50s with frizzy hair and a name tag that read, Rita. She was taping up a box destined for Ohio. "Be right with you, hun," she called out without looking up. "Take your time," I said, leaning against the counter. "I just need to ask about a notarization for a deed. I am new to the area." Rita finished with the box, slapped a label on it, and wiped her hands on her jeans. She walked over to me, offering a tired smile. "We can do deeds," she said. $10 a signature. You got ID? I pretended to rummage through my purse. I do, I said, but actually, I wanted to ask. My elderly mother needs to sign, but she has trouble getting around. Is it okay if I bring her ID and sign for her? She can FaceTime you if needed. Rita frowned. Technically, no. The signer has to be present. That is the law. I let out a sigh of disappointment. Oh, that is a shame. I said, my neighbor recommended you. She said you were really accommodating with her family. The Griffins? Linda and Gerald? I watched Rita's face closely. At the mention of the name, a flicker of recognition crossed her eyes. The Griffins? She repeated. Oh, yeah. The older couple. Nice folks. Talked a lot about their grandkids. Yes, that is them, I said, forcing a smile. Linda mentioned you guys were so helpful with the house papers back in July. She said it was a lifesaver because her daughter could not make it in. Rita laughed, a dry, rasping sound. Yeah, that was a busy day, she said, leaning her elbows on the counter. Warming to the gossip. We were swamped. Linda was in a real tear, saying the deadline for the filing was 5 o'clock. She lowered her voice slightly, conspiratorially. Between you and me, I usually stick to the rules, but Linda had her daughter's license, and she had a note signed by her saying she authorized her mom to sign. She said the daughter was stuck at a conference in Chicago and they were going to lose the rate lock if they did not sign that day. My stomach dropped. She remembered. She remembered the lie about Chicago because it was the truth. I was in Chicago. My mother had used my actual schedule to construct the lie. So you let Linda sign for her? I asked, keeping my voice light. Rita shrugged. She looked like an honest woman, you know? And the husband, Gerald, he was standing right there verifying it. I figured, it is family. Who is going to scam their own kid? I was rushed, honestly. I just stamped it to get them out the door. She paused, looking at me. But do not tell anyone I did that, she added with a wink. I could lose my stamp. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to grip the counter. She had admitted it. She had admitted to negligence that had cost me 30% of my home. I won't tell a soul. I said, thanks for the info. I will just bring my mom in. I walked out of the store, the bell jingling behind me. As soon as I was in my car, I locked the doors and started to cry. It wasn't sad crying. It was the terrified, adrenaline-fueled weeping of someone who has just looked over the edge of a cliff. My parents had stood in that store, lied to that woman's face, and forged my name while I was sitting in a seminar on data analytics 400 miles away. They had planned it, they had executed it, and they had done it with a smile. I drove straight to Naomi's office. Naomi listened to my recounting of the conversation with Rita without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad, her pen digging deep into the paper. When I finished, she sat back. That is the smoking gun. Alice, she said, Rita's admission is critical. It proves you were not present. It proves Linda signed your name, and it proves they manipulated a notary to do it. She took off her glasses. So, here is where we stand. You have two options. She held up one finger. Option 1. We file a civil suit to quiet title. We use Rita's testimony to void the deeds. We hope your family cooperates and signs the reversals to avoid court. This is the quiet path. It keeps them out of handcuffs, but it leaves the public record messy for a while, and it relies on them having enough shame to back down. She held up a second finger. Option 2. We go nuclear. You report the fraud to the police. Based on the amount of equity they attempted to steal, 30% of a $350,000 home. This is grand larceny and forgery. It is a felony. There will be an investigation. Rita will be interviewed. Your parents will likely be arrested and charged. I stared at her fingers. One finger was a lawsuit, the other was prison. Naomi leaned forward. I need to warn you. Alice, whichever path you choose, the result for your relationship is likely the same. You cannot sue your parents or arrest them and expect to have Sunday dinner again. This is the end of the family as you know it. I looked out the window at the brick wall of the courthouse next door. I thought about the photos Gerald had been sending me all week. I cannot arrest them. I whispered, I cannot be the one who puts my 70-year-old mother in jail. I just want them gone. I want them off my deed and out of my life. Then we try option 1 first, Naomi said. But we need to be aggressive. We need to show them we have the nuclear codes, even if we do not want to launch. I went home to a siege. My parents, unaware that I had discovered their crime, were ramping up their psychological warfare. They sensed my distance, the unreturned texts, the silence in the group chat, and they were responding with a barrage of emotional artillery. My phone was blinking with a voicemail from Linda. I played it while standing in my kitchen, staring at the new deadbolt I had installed. Alice, it is Mom, she said, her voice trembling with a curated fragility. I do not understand what is happening. Courtney called me crying, saying you are ghosting her. She needs a calm place. Alice, stress is bad for the baby. Do you want something to happen to the pregnancy? We are a family. We help each other. Please, just call us back so we can coordinate the movers. The movers. They were still planning the move. Then a text from Gerald. It was a photo of me and Courtney in a bathtub when we were toddlers, covered in bubbles. Remember this? He wrote. We always took care of you. Kiddo, we wiped your tears. We paid for your braces. Now you get to take care of us. That is the circle of life. Do not break the chain. I felt sick. The circle of life. He made it sound like a Disney movie, not a predatory extraction of wealth. I sat down at my computer. I had written a dozen drafts of a confrontation email over the last 24 hours. Some were angry, full of cursing and caps lock. Some were pleading, asking why. Why did you do this? But Naomi was right. Emotion was their currency, not mine. I needed to speak the language of facts. I opened a fresh draft. I added Linda, Gerald, Courtney, and Evan. Subject: immediate action required. Fraudulent deeds and title. My hands hovered over the keys. This was it. Once I sent this, there was no going back. I was lighting the match. Linda, Gerald, Courtney, and Evan. I am writing this to inform you that I have discovered the quitclaim deeds filed on July 12th and July 15th regarding my property at 424 Maplewood Drive. I have obtained certified copies from the county recorder's office. I know that I did not sign these documents. I know that I was in Chicago on the date of the alleged signature. I have spoken with the notary, Rita Halpern, who confirmed that Linda Griffin presented my identification and signed on my behalf without my presence or legal authorization. This is forgery and deed fraud. I have retained an attorney, Naomi Harris. We are prepared to take all necessary legal action to correct the record. However, before I involve the authorities, I am giving you one opportunity to resolve this quietly. You have 48 hours to execute the necessary documents to void these fraudulent deeds and remove your names from my title. You must also confirm in writing that no one will attempt to move into my home. If you do not agree to this by Friday at 5 p.m., I will be forced to escalate this matter to the Maple County Property Crimes Unit. Do not come to my house. Do not call me. Direct all communication to this email thread. Alice. I read it one last time. It was cold. It was terrifying. I hit send. The silence that followed was instant and absolute. It was 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. I imagined them sitting in their living rooms, phones pinging. I imagined the confusion, then the shock, then the panic. I didn't sleep. I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching the driveway on my doorbell camera feed. The next morning, the group chat was dead. No one posted. No one replied. I went to work. But I was useless. I stared at spreadsheets and saw only the signature of Rita Halpern. At 11 a.m., a private message popped up on my desktop from Courtney. Alice? I waited. Alice, I am freaking out. I just saw your email. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know. I typed back. You are on the deed. Courtney, you and Evan. How could you not know you owned part of my house? Her reply came fast, littered with typos. Mom said you signed it. She told us you signed papers back in July as a tax thing. She said it was to help with inheritance taxes later or something. She brought us the papers to sign and said, Alice already did her part. Just sign here to make it official. We thought it was all above board. We thought you were helping us. I stared at the screen. A tax thing. You thought I gave you 30% of my house as a tax strategy? I wrote, and you never mentioned it to me? You never thanked me? Mom told us not to, she replied. She said you were sensitive about money and that we shouldn't make a big deal of it. She said it was just paperwork. Alice, please, I am pregnant. I cannot deal with police. I did not forge anything. She was throwing Linda under the bus. It was pathetic, but it had the ring of truth. Courtney was not smart enough to orchestrate a deed fraud. She was exactly the kind of person who would sign a document because her mother told her it was free money. Then, my phone rang. It was Evan. I hesitated, then answered. I needed to hear what he had to say. Alice, he said, his voice tight and high. Look, we need to calm down. Everyone needs to take a breath. I am calm. Evan, I said, I am just waiting for you to sign the reversal. Yeah, about that, he said, letting out a nervous laugh. Look, Al, do we really need to involve lawyers? I mean, blowing up the family over paperwork? It seems extreme. Paperwork? I repeated. You stole my equity. Evan, we didn't steal it, he protested. Look, Linda explained it to us. This is how wealthy families do it. They share title. It protects the assets. It helps with taxes. We were just trying to be smart. Like estate planning. We figured you were on board with the whole dynasty thing. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a harsh, barking sound. Dynasty? I asked. Evan, you are unemployed. Courtney is broke. Mom and Dad are retired on a pension. We are not the Kennedys. We are not a wealthy family. We are people trying to pay our mortgages. You cannot estate plan with property you do not own. He went quiet. Well, you do not have to be so condescending, he muttered. We were just trying to secure our future. Sign the papers. Evan, I said, or tell the police about your dynasty strategy. I hung up. The delusion was breathtaking. They had convinced themselves that committing a felony was actually sophisticated financial planning. They weren't thieves in their own eyes. They were temporarily embarrassed millionaires rearranging their portfolio. At 4 p.m., the response from Linda arrived. It was not an apology. It was a manifesto. Alice, I am deeply hurt by your email. The tone is abusive and disrespectful to the people who gave you life. To accuse your own mother of a crime? It is beneath you. Let us be clear about the facts. Yes, I signed for you. I did it because you were busy, and we needed to get it done to help the family. I did it because I am your mother, and I have always acted in your best interest. You seem to forget that we paid for your books in college. We gave you $15,000 for your down payment. Did you think that was free? That was an investment in the family. We have a moral right to that house. We simply rebalance things. You have so much, and Courtney has so little. It is not fair that you sit in that house alone while your sister struggles. We put our names on the deed to ensure fairness, to ensure that if something happened to you, the house would go to the people who need it, not the bank. We are not removing our names. We are keeping them there to protect the family asset. If you want to sue us, go ahead. But remember who wiped your bottom. Remember who raised you. Linda. I read it twice. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to put the mouse down. There was no denial. She admitted she signed. She admitted she did it to rebalance the family assets. She felt entitled to my home because she had bought my textbooks 10 years ago and given me a gift, which she was now retroactively calling an investment. She didn't see me as a person. She saw me as a resource silo that she had the right to tap into whenever Courtney ran dry. I forwarded the email to Naomi. This is what she sent. I typed. Naomi replied 3 minutes later. Alice, this is gold. She just admitted to the act in writing. She admitted to the intent. She admitted she knew you weren't there. She calls it rebalancing, but the law calls it fraud. She is doubling down because she thinks you are bluffing. She thinks the moral right argument will make you fold. I am drafting the formal demand letter now. It will be on my letterhead. It will outline the statutes she has violated. It will demand the reversal within 24 hours, and it will state clearly that if they do not comply, we are filing the police report. This is the end of the conversation. Alice, we are done asking. I sat at my kitchen table as the sun went down. My house was quiet. The new locks were engaged. The blinds were drawn. At 5:30 p.m., Naomi sent me a copy of the letter she had emailed to them. It was terrifyingly formal. It cited penal codes. It mentioned prison terms for forgery in the second degree. It demanded a signature by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Sent, Naomi texted. Now we wait. I turned my phone face down on the counter. I tried to eat dinner, but food tasted like ash. I tried to watch TV, but I couldn't focus. I kept imagining Linda reading that letter. I imagined the color draining from her face as she realized that her moral right held no weight in a court of law. Or maybe she wouldn't care. Maybe she was so deep in her own reality that she thought she could explain fairness to a judge. The night passed in a blur of anxiety. I slept in fitful, 20-minute bursts. Every creak of the house sounded like a footstep. The next day, Friday, was the longest day of my life. I worked from home, keeping my email open in one tab and my work in another. 9 a.m., nothing. 12 p.m., nothing. 3 p.m., nothing. At 4:45 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Naomi. Alice. She wrote, "The deadline is in 15 minutes. We have received no response, no signed documents, no phone calls from their counsel." I stared at the clock. 4:46, 4:47. They weren't going to do it. They were calling my bluff. They didn't believe I would actually send the police to my parents' door. They were banking on the daughter in me being stronger than the homeowner in me. At 5:01 p.m., Naomi texted again. They did not sign. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for a week. "What now?" I typed back. "Now we execute option 2, Naomi replied. "I have the police report drafted. I am attaching the email from your mother as Exhibit A. I am filing it with the Maple County Property Crimes Unit first thing Monday morning. Alice, I need you to be ready. Once I file this. The machine starts. Detectives will call. They might pay your parents a visit. It is going to get very real, very fast." And she added, "I need you to secure yourself physically. Change your routine. Keep your doors locked. Things usually get loud when people realize their leverage is gone." I looked at the text. Things usually get loud. I looked out my front window. The street was empty. The leaves were blowing across the lawn my mother had hired a stranger to mow. I realized then that the silence was over. The war had moved from the cold phase to the hot phase. I typed back to Naomi, "File it." I put the phone down. I walked to the front door and checked the deadbolt one more time. It was solid. It was real. I was ready for the noise. Saturday morning arrived not with sunlight, but with the hiss of air brakes. I was asleep on the couch, where I had passed out from exhaustion around 3 in the morning. The sound jolted me awake. It was a heavy industrial sound, the kind that does not belong on a quiet suburban cul-de-sac. I crawled to the window and peeled back the blind. A large moving truck was idling in my driveway, blocking my car, and they were all there. Courtney and Evan were standing by the back of the truck. The ramp already extended. Evan was holding a box. Courtney was holding Mason's hand. But the true commanders of the operation were Linda and Gerald. My mother was standing on my lawn, pointing at the garage door, directing the movers. My father was holding a clipboard. They looked busy. They looked efficient. They looked like people who had absolutely no intention of listening to a lawyer's letter. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic drumbeat of panic. They had called my bluff. They had calculated, with cold precision, that I might send a threatening email, but I would never have the nerve to turn away a moving truck. They were betting that when I saw my pregnant sister and my nephew standing on my porch, the responsible daughter programming would kick in. And I would open the door. I watched as Evan walked up the path to the front door. He looked annoyed. shifting the weight of the box in his arms. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the key. The key with the pink cap that I had found hanging in my hallway. He slid it into the lock. He turned it. It didn't move. I saw him frown. He jiggled it. He pulled it out and looked at it. Then tried again, shoving it harder. It still didn't turn. He turned back to the driveway and shouted something to Linda. My mother stopped pointing and marched up the walk, her face set in a mask of irritated determination. I shrank back from the window, trembling. Then, the doorbell rang. Once, twice, 10 times, a frantic, demanding chime that echoed through the empty house. "Alice!" Linda shouted. Her voice was muffled by the door but distinct. "Alice, stop being dramatic. We are here. The movers are on the clock. Open the door." She pounded on the wood with her fist. Bang, bang, bang. "Alice, this is ridiculous. Let us in and we can talk like a family." I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor of the hallway. I felt like a child hiding from a monster. My instinct was to open it. My instinct was to apologize, to stop the noise, to make the neighbors stop looking. "No," I whispered to myself. "No." I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed Naomi. She answered on the first ring. "They are here," I whispered. "They are all here. There is a truck. Are you inside?" Naomi asked. Her voice was calm, a steel anchor in the storm. "Yes, the door is locked. They are trying to get in." "Stay inside," Naomi ordered. "Do not open the door. Do not engage in a debate. You are the legal owner. They are trespassers. You have the right to refuse entry." "But my mom is screaming," I said, tears leaking from my eyes. "She is screaming that I am being dramatic." "Let her scream," Naomi said. "Document it if you can. But Alice, listen to me. If you open that door, they will move in, and once they are in, you will have to evict them. That takes months. Do not let them cross the threshold." I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said. "Okay." I hung up. I stood up. My legs felt like jelly. But I walked to the door. I didn't unlock it. I put my face close to the wood. "Go away!" I shouted. The pounding stopped instantly. "Alice?" It was Linda. "Alice, honey, open the door. You changed the locks?" "That is very silly. We have the truck here. We can't send it back. Just open up so we can unload. I know about the deeds." "Mom!" I yelled, my voice shaking but loud. "I know you forged my signature. I know you tried to steal my house." There was a silence on the other side. A heavy, stunned silence. Then, Linda's voice changed. It lost its sugary coating and became sharp, jagged. "We did not steal anything. We secured the family's future. Now stop this nonsense and open the door before you embarrass us in front of the neighbors." "I am not opening the door," I screamed back. "The keys don't work because I changed them. If you try to force the door, I am calling the police." I heard Evan say something low and angry. Then I heard Mason's voice, small and confused. "Mommy, why won't Aunt Alice let us in? Is she mad at me?" The sound of his voice felt like a knife in my gut. I covered my mouth to stifle a sob. They were using him. They had brought him here as a human shield. Then Gerald spoke. He was close to the door, his voice low and rumbling. "Alice, listen to me. Be reasonable. You have a lawyer involved? You want to file reports? You will ruin all our lives. You will put your mother through hell." "Is that what you want? Over a house?" "It is my house. Dad!" I cried. "It is my life. It is just bricks and wood." "Alice!" Linda shrieked, exploding. "We did it for the family. You are choosing paperwork over your own blood. You are leaving your sister on the street. How can you be so selfish?" I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. "You have 24 hours to sign the papers Naomi sent," I said, my voice dropping to a flat, dead tone. "If you don't, I am filing the report. Now get off my porch." I walked away. I went into the kitchen and sat on the floor, putting my hands over my ears. I could still hear them. I heard Linda shouting threats. I heard Evan kicking the door once, a dull thud. I heard Courtney crying. My phone, which I had left on the hallway table, began to buzz. It vibrated against the wood. Zzzt, zzzt, zzzt. It didn't stop. It was a continuous, angry stream of noise. I didn't look at it. I just sat there, rocking back and forth, waiting. It took 40 minutes. Finally, I heard the heavy rumble of the truck's engine starting up. I heard the hiss of the brakes releasing. I heard car doors slamming. I crawled to the living room window and peeked out. The driveway was empty. They were gone. I let out a long, ragged breath and collapsed onto the rug. I lay there for a long time, watching the dust motes dance in the shaft of sunlight that was cutting through the room. I felt hollowed out. I felt like I had survived a hurricane, but my roof had blown off. Hours later, when the shadows were long and the house was silent, I finally picked up my phone. The screen was full of notifications. 79 missed calls. 79. They were from everyone: Linda, Gerald, Courtney, Evan, even one from Aunt Sarah. I opened the texts. They were a manifesto of rage. Linda, you are dead to me. Linda, I cannot believe I raised such a heartless child. Gerald, you have humiliated us. Courtney, I have nowhere to go. Alice, nowhere. I hope you are happy. Evan, you promised us this house. We have texts. We will sue you. They were threats. They were lies. They were the desperate thrashing of people who had been caught and refused to admit they were wrong. I didn't reply to any of them. I took screenshots of everything: the missed calls, the texts, the voicemails where Linda screamed that I was ungrateful trash. I emailed them to Naomi. They came. I wrote, they tried to get in. They left. Here is the evidence. Naomi replied 10 minutes later, I am filing the report now. That evening, a police officer from the Maple County Property Crimes Unit called me. His name was Detective Miller. His voice was dry, clinical, devoid of the emotional hysteria that had been drowning me for weeks. Ms. Griffin, he said, we have received the affidavit of forgery and the supporting documents from your attorney. I need to confirm a few details. You state that on July 12th, you were in Chicago, correct? Yes, I said. And you state that the signature on the deed recorded that day is not yours? It is not mine, and you suspect your parents, Gerald and Linda Griffin, of executing this document? Hearing him say it, suspects, Gerald and Linda Griffin, felt surreal. It sounded like a scene from a crime procedural, not my life. Yes, I said, I do. Okay, he said, we will open a case file. We will be pulling the notary's logbook and interviewing Ms. Halpern. We may need to bring your parents in for questioning. I closed my eyes. Okay, I whispered. In the weeks that followed, the silence from my immediate family was absolute, but the noise from the extended family was deafening. The fallout rippled through the Griffin network like a shockwave. Linda, true to form, had launched a preemptive PR campaign. She told aunts, uncles, and cousins that I had snapped, that I had promised Courtney the house and then reneged at the last minute due to jealousy over the baby. She told them I was suing her for trying to help. Some believed her. I got a nasty card from my Uncle Mike telling me that family loyalty is a lost art. I got blocked on social media by 2 cousins, but not everyone bought it. One night, my cousin Beth, the one who had congratulated Courtney at the diner, called me. Alice, she said, her voice hushed. I just wanted to say, I heard what really happened. Aunt Sarah told me about the forged deed. I held my breath. I believe you, Beth said. Honestly, Linda has always been a lot. I remember when we were kids, she used to open your birthday cards and take the cash, saying she was saving it for you. We all saw it. We just never said anything. I started to cry. It was the first time anyone in the family had validated my reality. Thank you, I choked out. You are doing the right thing, Beth said. Protect yourself. The legal machine ground forward. Rita Halpern, terrified of losing her license and facing jail time, flipped on my parents immediately. She gave a sworn statement that Linda had signed the deed and Gerald had witnessed it. Faced with the notary's testimony and the threat of a felony trial, my parents' lawyer advised them to settle. They signed the reversal documents. They admitted no guilt in the settlement. It was a no-contest plea to avoid jail time. But the deed was voided. My title was clear. I was safe. But I was an orphan. I hadn't spoken to Courtney in 6 weeks. I knew through Beth that they were staying in a cramped motel off the highway, burning through their meager savings. Evan was working shifts at a warehouse. It was a grim reality, far from the wealthy family dynasty they had imagined. Then, one Tuesday night, my phone pinged. It was a text from Courtney. "Hey," she wrote. "I know you probably won't answer. I just wanted to say, I didn't know the full story. Mom told me you signed it. I really believed her." I stared at the bubbles, waiting for more. "We are in a motel," she continued. "It smells like smoke. Mason asks about you. I keep wondering, was there another way? Could you have just let us stay for a bit without the police? I feel like we lost everything because of a signature." I read the message over and over. She still didn't get it. She still thought it was about a signature. She didn't see the betrayal. She didn't see that they had tried to steal my future to subsidize hers. She wanted me to absolve her. She wanted me to say, "Yes, I overreacted. Come home." I typed a reply. "You didn't lose everything because of a signature. You lost it because you felt entitled to something that wasn't yours." I looked at it. It was true. But it was also cruel. I deleted it. I typed, "I hope you guys are okay." I deleted that too. It was a lie. I put the phone down. I didn't reply. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I walked through my house. It was quiet. The guest room was empty. The floral pillows were gone. The air smelled of lemon and peace. I sat down at my kitchen table, where the boxes of legal files were stacked. I pulled out the final document Naomi had sent, the confirmation that the fraudulent deeds had been expunged from the county record. The house was 100% Alice Griffin. I signed it. My hand was steady. I opened my laptop and started a new email draft. I typed Courtney in the recipient line. Subject: "Someday I left the body blank." I saved it to drafts. Maybe someday, when the anger had burned down to ash, I would have the words, maybe someday, when she stopped being Linda's daughter and started being her own person. We could talk, but for now, I closed the laptop. I walked to the front door and threw the deadbolt. I was alone. And for the first time in my life, that was exactly what I wanted to be. Thank you so much for listening to Alice's story. It is a heavy journey about boundaries, betrayal, and the cost of protecting yourself. But I hope it resonated with you. I would love to know where you are listening from. Please drop your country or city in the comments below. And if you have ever had to make a tough choice between family and your own well-being, share your thoughts in English. I read every single one. Don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more realistic, emotional dramas. See you in the next story.